All right, everyone, welcome back into another fantasy golf video. Going to be breaking down the U.S. Open here for you guys, giving you guys a preview, the top picks and plays, and outright bets, as well as giving you guys a first look build. Let's go ahead and jump into it. So obviously this is going to be the U.S. Open. It's going to be a major. This is a very interesting track. Okay, it's a par 70, and it's going to play out as a pretty long par 70 course. Weather-wise, we're not going to be worried about weather, which is nice. But when we look at the specialist data, we're going to have a lot to look at. And what I mean by that is this is a track in which it is very much bunker line. There's like 120 bunkers, a little bit less than that. But that's essentially the rough. The rough is going to be thick when you hit into the rough, don't get me wrong. But the biggest defense is going to be the bunkers. And looking at how long the track is, that does tell me that this U.S. Open is still going to play pretty much like all the other U.S. Opens have played as well. So with that, we kind of know what to look at data-wise for the key stats. And we see the previous scores, again. Oh, yeah, Matt Fitzpatrick. That was probably my favorite outright win. Basically been on all the past 5 winners. Actually have been all the past 5 winners. We've been locked in data-wise, so I'm not going to change what I'm looking at key stat-wise. And you guys are probably thinking, well, why? It's a different course. And that's because the U.S. Open, the PGA Championship, those specific majors want their tournament to play a specific way. So they select their courses based off of kind of how they want the tournament to play. And that, to me, is still going to be true with Pinehurst this year. And so for this video, I actually want to start out with the specialist data. And if you guys have never watched the video, the specialist data is a better way of kind of looking at players that are like course fits. Like this is looking at which golfers are the best specialists in terms of course designer, greens, location, length of course, type of scoring, like it's a harder scoring event, weather, par 70. And so when we look at that, that's going to be a better way of looking at. Some people are going to be looking at comp courses. And I looked, there really isn't that many great comp courses. Like maybe Sedgefield, the Wyndham Championship, but really not a good one. But when we look at kind of the best specialists, probably a small sample size coming in here, but a lot of the top end golfers are still going to be the players that we're looking at, which to me is very encouraging. The big 3 are the top 3 there. So like to see that there as well. But if you want to dial it in a little bit, like by course designer, by the amount of bunkers that we have, by the course designer, location you could do as well, like North Carolina, don't mind that. Fast greens, green width I like, fairway width I like as well. The fairway is not going to be too hard to hit. That's maybe a distinction this week. It shouldn't be too hard to hit. You got to be strong off the tee. But again, kind of looking at small sample size here, we can see that really fairway width and scoring here for Frederick here. But other than that, pretty good idea of who we should be looking at. But again, I think this is a better way of kind of looking at which golfers to be on in terms of course fit rather than trying to pull a comp course, if that makes sense. And so typically speaking, we always want to look at course history before specialist data. But given how, it's a major, being that it's a different course every year, I kind of like default into specialist data a little bit more than I would on a normal week. And so looking at it, I will show you guys the kind of comp courses that I am looking at, or really what the data is that I'm pulling out for course history. The last 2 U.S. Opens, again, they want the U.S. Opens to all play relatively the same. And kind of because of that, it tends to play the same as the PGA Championship. So I do want to be looking at that as well. And then did toss in the Masters. There is a pretty strong correlation to golfers that had played well at the previous 2 majors tend to play well at the U.S. Open, at the next major. That's just how it goes. And so that's what we're looking at. We got Scotty, Colin Morikawa, Xander, Rory, no shock there. Willie Z, kind of a major type player. Tends to play better at majors. Ming-Woo Lee is definitely an interesting click. You got Bryson. I'll get into Bryson area. He's interesting this week. Patrick Cantlay, Harris English, Tom Kim. Hideki is going to be one of my favorite picks, and you guys will see that in here in a second. But a lot of golfers with kind of some strong event-ish history that we're looking at. Recent form probably going to be a little bit more important for you guys, so let's jump into that. So recent form-wise, obviously Scotty in the best recent form. Taking over the second spot, which had been dominated by by Xander Schauffele for like 2 years now, it seems like, is Colin Morikawa. And this is a measure of over their last 7 starts. If you guys are ever wondering why 7 starts, well, that is because that gives us a proper sample size. After 7 starts, the data relevance falls off. Before 7 starts, the data is not relevant enough to the point where there's going to be a little bit more misses that occurs. And that's kind of my way of chasing both safety and upside. I mentioned that a bunch in my videos. But anyways, obviously over his last 7 starts, if you want to look at his last 3 starts, just across the board has been playing extremely well. And the fact that he's coming in off of a second place finish is huge. Xander, you could argue second best recent form in the field as well. Whatever. That's just, there's a small difference there, right? But really the top four, Scotty, Morikawa, Xander, Rory, just love that there. And then Hideki. And so Hideki's probably going to be a player I'm going out of my way to target. Tommy Fleetwood just been a big cut maker. 8 straight make cuts, all basically around top 25 finishes. He just has not been able to take that next step. Obear with that one missed cut, and then basically just a bunch of strong finishes. So he is still ranking out well. Bryson has been playing well lately on the PGA Tour, basic only majors, now. So still playing well. And again, I'll touch on him in a second. You got Corey Connors, who continues to deliver great results after great results and still continues to be too cheap, both outright wise and DFS wise. Looking at him, 23 straight make cuts. I mean, that's great. Tony Finau continuing to play well. Cam Smith is someone we're looking at. So a lot of players in some good recent form. And then just jumping into the top stat fits and what we're looking at for key stat data. Again, this is going to be based off of how the past U.S. Opens have played. Effective scoring, which is going to be that 9-to-5 stat. That's a combination stat, which basically measures, strokes gain differential, strokes gain total, strokes gain off the tee, scoring before the cut, just a bunch of those stats. So always like to see a golfer popping up in that. So that's going to be one of the key stats we're looking at. We're looking at ball striking and total driving. That is huge here. If you're looking at 2 stats only, you want to be looking at those 2 stats this week. High correlation between golfers that are strong total driving and ball striking, and then producing good results at the U.S. Open. Effective birdie to bogey ratio. That's going to be that combination stat, bogey avoidance and birdie to bogey ratio. Another huge correlation is avoiding bogeys, but you also still have to be scoring birdies. So we're looking at that as a combination stat. Greens gained. If you are someone that's just peppering the greens, that is always huge as well. And then a little bit of strokes gained to the green, always looking at that. Strokes gained around the green as well. Don't look at that typically, but this week that does spike a little bit more. So looking at the top stat fits, probably not shocking that much to anyone. We got Scotty Scheffler, Bryson, Xander, Rory, Obear, Hatton, Finau, Corey Connors, Cam Smith, JT, Aaron Rai, Keegan Bradley, Sam Burns, Benny Ann. So again, a lot of good stat fits. A lot of players are going to be coming in, checking all the boxes this week. And so with that, let's go ahead and jump on into the top picks this week. So last week I had mentioned that the issue was that it was very hard to make a good build DFS wise. Outright wise, I felt like it was really a 3-man race between the big 3, Scotty, Rory, Xander. And then maybe if you wanted to, toss in Collin Morikawa as well, because Collin Morikawa was coming in checking all the boxes. And that is what ended up happening betting-wise. That might be the same case betting-wise this week, guys. DFS-wise, though, much easier week DFS-wise, both in cash and GPPs. GPP-wise, still a fine week last week. Finished 12th in a GPP mini-max on DraftKings and then 2nd on Yahoo. I've been playing Yahoo a little bit more. But looking at it this week, guys, Scotty Scheffler going to be just the easy plug-and-play. You could argue, given his performance, given his likelihood to play well, and given how many players are in the field, that he is still too cheap. Even at $13K, he is the best specialist, best course history. Again, we're not looking at like course history for, say, it's event history and whatnot. Best recent form, best stat fit. One in all of them across the board. That tells us that we should be trying to fit Scotty Scheffler into our builds, like we should every week, right? So we want to do that pretty much. And so when we're pulling up kind of the first look build, we're going to attempt to do that here. Obviously going to be difficult, but if he wins or if he even finishes top 5, that's most likely going to pay off for you. Now, after that, I am surprised that Rory is higher priced than Xander. Xander should be higher priced than Rory no matter what right now. And that just continues not to happen. I don't really get why. Xander has shown more upside or just as much upside and a little bit more safety, reliability, less of a roller coaster. And so I like him a little bit more. I'm going to be going with Xander a little bit more, but I wouldn't argue anyone for playing Rory. Just a tremendous pick as well. I mean, it's a fine line there between these guys. As you guys can see, stat fit wise, data wise, Rory going to be a phenomenal play, but Xander just a little bit better across the board. We can see 3rd in specialist, a little bit better event history, a little bit better stat fit, a little bit better in recent form rank. And so Xander just a little bit better across the board. And I would just much rather end up with him rather than Rory, given the price difference there. Outright wise, they're both like 9-1, 10-1. Be fine with them at those numbers. And guys, you can bet Scotty at 300-1, or sorry, not 300-1, obviously, plus 300. Like, that's fine. That is fine. After that is where it gets a little bit interesting. So I do want to talk about Bryson. So Bryson is certainly fascinating. Like, I don't care about his live golf results at all. Okay, we kind of have learned that those don't really matter in terms of a lot of golfers playing well at the majors, or at least that's what it seems like data-wise. Still not probably a full sample size to make that exact distinction, but that's kind of what it seems like. With Bryson, he has been extremely lucky at the past 2 majors. And I'm not trying to take away anything with how he has played. He pops up data-wise. He popped up extremely well at the PGA Championship data-wise as well. I expect him to have a good week. That being said, I don't expect him to hit a ball into a tree, most likely looking at a bogey or potentially double bogey, and have that ball land in the fairway and have him make a birdie because of that. Like, that is something that has occurred. He's chipped in like 4 times in spots where he had no business chipping in on. And yes, those are great shots. But the fact that he's done that 4 times, like, those could have all easily been 2 strokes worse from those spots that he was in, at least 1 spot worse. And so let's say you take away, the PGA Championship, you could easily argue that you more times than not, he would have finished 4 strokes worse than what he did. He got a lot of lucky breaks there. That typically wouldn't occur. That being said, I thought the U.S. Open would be the best course for him, the best situation for him. The Masters as well, chipped in on his last hole to get within, I think, maybe the top 10 or secure that top 10 finish. That could have easily been a par. He did that earlier on in the week there as well. So I'm having a tough time with Bryson with that. And again, that is just going to be due to his kind of luck a little bit. But again, this is going to be a good track for him. I feel much more comfortable outright betting Bryson. I've already done that. Than I do with him being a DFS pick this week. Just because, again, how likely is he to have that same upside when we can't bank on him to hit those lucky shots? And again, they were still great shots. I'm not taking that away from him, but again, you guys get the point. And especially when we can just get Collin Morikawa at such a cheap price tag. The biggest issue that I had with last week is that given Morikawa's price tag, I felt more comfortable going with Xander and going with Morikawa, which I don't think was a mistake. I think that was basically correct. Because that allowed you to fit another good pick into your builds. And I kind of feel that way again with Morikawa. And so that's a weird balancing act. Like, I started my build out here with going Scotty. I've tossed in Xander as well, but you could easily just go like Morikawa. Heck, you could start your builds out with Morikawa and feel pretty comfortable with it if you want to go fair and balanced. Maybe in cash, maybe that's what you look at, but just given how well Scotty has played, you're basically locking in a top 5 finish. Like, it's tough to avoid that. I get that. But Morikawa is just also a phenomenal play. A lot of people were trying to talk people into Victor Hovland as a play. Last week, I was like, don't do that when you can play Morikawa, who was in Victor Hovland's situation like 7 weeks ago, where he was trying to find a shot. You're going to have some missed swings here and there when you're doing that. Great that they're finding their form. Morikawa has found his form. That is clear and evident, right? 2nd, 4th, 16th, 23rd, 9th, 3rd. So he has been playing well over his past 7 starts. His worst finish over his past 7 starts, 23rd place finish. Last 3, 2nd, 4th, 4th, right in contention for those. And he didn't lose last week, I wouldn't say. He set himself up to potentially win last week. And I think that's a big thing. I mentioned in a funny tweet after the PGA Championship that I thought Bryson DeChambeau had a great chance to win because he finished runner-up. The previous 2 major winners finished runner-up in their last event. The player that really fits, that was a take against Liv, but the player that fits that mold perfectly is Collin Morikawa. So he's probably my favorite outright bet other than the big 3. He's my favorite DFS play given his price tag. He is so easy to play. He has played extremely well at the majors. Maybe not the best stat fit. A little bit worried about the total driving and ball striking. If he struggles, that's going to be the reason why. But he has been playing better recently in that regard. And then from there, let's go ahead and jump on into some mid-tier plays. So those are all the studs that I'm paying up for. Obear, I'm definitely happy to play. Interesting note about him as well. He did play at this course, the most recent probably out of most players competitively. It was the U.S. Amateur. He lost to, I think it was one of the Cootie brothers in the round of 32 or 64. It's not like he lost to someone bad, right? A tour pro. One of the Cooties, or maybe actually he lost to a pro that's on tour right now. So not terrible to look at, but that was from like 2019, so not really relevant. But at least he has some competitive experience here, which is more than he's had for basically every single tournament this year, and he's been playing well. I'm fine with him as a pick. I would just rather go with Morikawa there, just the easy plug and play. After that, we jump on into the mid-tier. Cam Smith is still going to be someone that I am looking at this week. Now, the length does worry me a little bit, but the amount of bunkers here, being a guy from Australia, kind of, I think, is going to set his game up well. That's probably part of the reason as to why he's a top 10 specialist. Going to be a good stat fit in terms of the data that we have on him, and I say that because we're not pulling in any like key stats for live golfers because they don't have any key stat data from this season. So all the key stat data that we have from Cam Smith, from all the live golfers, is from previous seasons or the majors thus far. So we still have some data, and he would be a top 10 staff at using that data. 13th best recent form, has played well when we have seen him lately on the PGA Tour. He's a tough player not to click on build-wise. And so if you are playing like DFS, he's just like the easy click. Colin Morikawa, Cam Smith, an easy click, just at their price tags. I mean, Cam Smith has been that easy click. I know he struggled at the PGA Championship. That is a worry, but played well at the Masters. And this is kind of what I mean about live golf results not really mattering in terms of relevance. Miscut, 6th place finish. 2nd place, 63rd. Like, he's a good example of that. But still, he should be a safe play. After that, Tommy Fleetwood is also going to be someone that I feel like is very difficult not to end up on, given his price. I don't think he's someone that you want to bet outright-wise. I don't think that makes sense. Has played well at the majors recently. Missed the cut at the U.S. Open 2 years ago. That's really the only data point that we'd be worried about coming in. Other than that, a pretty strong staff fit across the board. Nothing too elite, nothing too concerning. You know, a strong total driver, ranks out 15th in the field. Like that there from him. Maybe it's the recent form that might worry some people. The fact that he hasn't had like top 10 finishes. But that's also why he's priced this way. Like, you're getting a lot of safety there. You're getting a top 20 finish at such a cheap price tag. So he's a click that makes a lot of sense. Top 5 specialist. Now, I will say, it wouldn't be shocking to see Tommy Fleetwood kind of have the Wyndham Clark type of week where maybe everything comes together for his first big victory. I don't really see that happening with him. I think there's other plays that we can look at that maybe are a little bit better than Fleetwood, but strong playing cash. And so again, this is where this week maybe a little bit too easy to make a good build. After that, we do have some decisions because you got Matt Fitzpatrick, who's going to be a strong play, obviously a U.S. Open winner. You got Tony Finau, who has kind of struggled at this event in the past. There's a little bit of that concern, but he is a strong staff fit, 7th in the field. Great recent form, still ranks out top 11 as well in the 9-5 model. But the play that I've been going out of my way to roster a little bit more, and you guys will see Hatton's going to be a good play as well, is actually going to be Hideki. Okay, so Hideki is someone that typically does like to get around in before a major, and that's exactly what he was able to do this time around. And I say that because before the PGA Championship, which should have been a great course setup for him as well, he had to withdraw from the event prior to the PGA Championship. So it was tough for me to be on him. He is someone that likes to play a competitive round prior. And so the fact that he finished 8th at the Memorial last week to me is highly encouraging for a guy that was already popping up decently. So we look at it, guys, effective scoring, he ranks 1st in the field. So that is obviously going to be huge for him. Not the best total driver and ball striker. That is a little bit of a concern to me, but he does play a lot of smart shots. He is good with his long iron as well. There's going to be a lot of golfers that are going to be forced into playing a lot of long iron shots. So that's also a key stat that I'm looking at this week as well. The form has been pretty strong, other than really the Masters, where a little bit unfortunate that he didn't play well there. And then again, with the PGA Championship, he didn't get his competitive round in before that. So I can kind of write that off. Love the fact that he had an 8th place finish. I will be betting on him outright as well. At 45-1, those are going to be really good odds. He has played well at a U.S. Open before, finishing 4th in 2022. If he is on his game, like I expect him to be, I expect him to be in contention as well. And so to get him DFS-wise at 8K, to me, that's just an easy plug and play. A lot of people are maybe going to be worried about him withdrawing. I don't see that happening. Like, there's always random stuff with Hideki. I don't think we're worried about that with him. The one interesting play here is going to be what to do with Tyrrell Hatton. Hatton did not have a good finish at the PGA Championship, but Hatton is someone that is really popping up this week as well. Probably one of the best plays per dollar. I don't think he's a good outright bet. I just don't see him winning. I don't think he has that mental fortitude to win a major. He kind of said that at the PGA Championship, so that was concerning. He hasn't exactly had the best results at U.S. Opens as well. Did struggle kind of at the PGA Championship as well. But what we have seen from him is that he is typically a good total driver, typically a good ball striker as well, and typically a golfer that's not going to make many mistakes. Recent form has still been pretty solid for the most part. The issue with Hatton is that he's not playing on the PGA Tour anymore, so we don't have a really strong way of gauging how good of a play he is this week, and that's probably why we're getting him at this price. To me, that does feel like a mistake. To me, he does still seem like someone that should be able to make the cut. And so already we have a very strong build going fair and balanced. And so that is going to be the issue this week. And then one last play that I really want to call out here is going to be Corey Connors. Corey Connors continues to pop up data-wise. And I know he has kind of struggled at previous U.S. Opens, and I will say that it is still a concern because, well, it's the length. The length can get to him a little bit. You know, that adds up over a weekend. But for DFS purposes, at 7-2, We just need him to make the cut. And I think he does give us a good potential at making the cut. He's going to be a top 8 staffing, guys. Ranks 3rd in the field in ball striking, 17th in total driving, 4th in effective birdie to bogey ratio. Just strong across the board, not making too many mistakes. Last week, the top 20 finish was what I expected out of him. That was awesome. And if we can get that again from him, which we have consistently gotten from him this season, I'm happy to do that at this price tag. And so for first look build to close it out, I'm happy to go with Corey Connors. And again, this is such a strong build that I kind of hate that it's such a strong build. It is super easy to make a fair and balanced build. Really, the only reason we'd be dropping down this low is because we're playing Scotty, because we're playing Xander and maybe Rory. You got Harris English there. That looks like a good play. Billy Horschel has been playing much better recently, and if he continues to play this good, he's going to be someone you want to look at. Kurt Kitayama, not a good result last week, but he's someone you'll probably be looking at. Seb Straka, his one bad start recently was at the PGA Championship. That's sandwiched in between 3 top 10s. It seems like he's probably putting a little bit of too much stress on him at these majors. But if he figures that out, who's to say he can't get another top 10 finish? Because he has been pretty strong this season. You look at it, guys, 8th best in the field in recent form. He has been spectacular. Over his past 7 starts, 5th, miscut, 8th, 11th, 5th, 16th. Just phenomenal. So he is someone that like I think I want to play, especially at this price tag. 8th best recent form, like that is tough to ignore. At the same time, definitely not a cash play or anything like that. A GPP only play, but still a strong play on paper to me. Lucas Glover, he did miss a cut last week, and so finally, I guess, is the way of looking at it. He's kind of one of those players that I was comfortable to keep rolling with because he's been paying off for us. Now, what do we do with him this week? Like, value-wise, he should be a good play on paper. Has some Carolina ties as well. South Carolina ties. I don't know if that counts. But, just still a fine play as a value play. Bazunhout, someone I could be talked into at 6.2. Jaeger, probably going to make the cut. Mackenzie Hughes, those are all fine plays to make the cut. Taylor Pendrith is someone that does a little bit better on those longer tracks. He gets a big bump there. Kind of tough to ignore Mark Hubbard, who has kind of fallen off recently, but still 16 straight made cuts for him. I mean, that's encouraging. Adam Svensson seems like a cheap made cut as well. And so we have a lot of options to go with if you are looking at potentially doing a studs and duds build. And so you guys already saw this is going to be kind of my first look build for DraftKings, but I'm very interested to see what the data says as well, what the 9-to-5 lineup builder says. So let's check that out. And so I had already ran it here. Without making, changes, just kind of ran it. And so let's just take a peek at what those lineups are. And so it likes going Obear, Morikawa, Fleetwood, Hatton, Connors, Benny Ann. So it is kind of telling us to do more of a studs and duds approach. Now, I am curious. Let's say we want to lock in Scotty to 30% of builds, and maybe same thing with Xander, because again, pricing, we'll do it first with Scotty. Lock him into 30% of builds. I'm just kind of curious as to what the best build on paper would be with Scotty. And so the data likes Finau, Hatton, Connors, Benny Ann, Keegan Bradley. Not exactly that studs and dudsy. So that's interesting there. I went ahead and locked in Scotty and Xander into builds. And so I'm just curious. I don't mind it. Because you can go with Keegan. Kurt Kitayama, it kind of says I might differ from that a little bit. But yeah, Bazunhout and Hubbard as well, like not terrible. And then let's see if we just lock in Xander, kind of what the lineups are as well. And so Fleetwood, Finau, it's going to be pulling in the same players, obviously, because the data likes them that much. But I think you guys get a good sense of that. But that's the issue, is that it's too easy to make good builds this week, which maybe I'll have multiple main builds this week. And then just real quickly, taking a peek at my favorite outright bets for this week. I might not be on Rory. The more I kind of talk through it, the more I kind of think we don't need to be on him this week. But that just makes it like Xander an easier bet. 12-1 on William Hill. Like that there from him. Scotty Scheffler. Like, a lot of people haven't been betting on Scotty to win because the number's too bad. And I always just like to remind people, like, look at any other betting. Like 3-1 is still pretty darn good, and compared to like any other bets that in any other sports, like that's still pretty darn good. And you just bet more. My strategy that I tell people to do, and that I do, is like you bet to try to win a certain amount each week. You create that budget for the year and kind of projected forecast for the year. You can factor that into how you go about betting on Scotty. Then you're just bumping up your units for him that week, and maybe bumping down some other players slightly. But like it's tough not to bet him. I mean, I'm happy to get 3-1 on him. Actually, I thought it'd be a little bit worse, but that just tells you how well Xander's been playing, how well Rory's been playing as well. And so to me, it does almost feel like the big three or bust again this week. But again, I thought this could be the best week for Bryson. You can get him at 20-1 on BetMGM, like that there from him. Collin Morikawa, a little bit annoying that he had that good of a week because I wonder if he would still be at 14-1. Corey Connors, I do think he's fine for a long shot bet. He does really remind me of Gary Woodland when he won the U.S. Open. He does remind me of Wyndham Clark when he won the U.S. Open as well. You know, one of those guys that has just been a strong play throughout the year. Great stat fit for this tournament. Just hasn't put it all together. Maybe that happens at a major, but again, don't exactly love it. And then I do really like Hideki at 50-1 on most sites, about 45-1 on average. I feel like that's a good prop or a good outright bet as well. Maybe a better top 20 bet. And I do want to talk about Hovland because I think he could be a good outright bet. I didn't think people were like wrong to outright bet him last week, but like in comparison to Collin Morikawa, I thought it was bad. So I mentioned with Morikawa, he had been someone that had found his form, whereas Hovland had been someone that was trying to find his form. So the fact that he had that one outlier bad round, not shocking. To me, what he did last week, highly encouraging, actually. Very encouraging, actually. And so to get him at 18-1, I just don't exactly like the number because it still wasn't a great finish, but it does seem to be like he has found his swing at least. And it would be surprising to see him win. So at 18-1, I still am kind of comfortable betting that as well. And he might take the place of Rory for me this week. We'll see. Still on the fence about that one. But that is going to be all for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to give a like and subscribe. If you guys want access to any of the data sheets that you saw in this video, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Available for a whopping $10 a month. Best value out there. I price it for you guys that way. Take advantage of it. Thanks for watching. And as always, let's keep cashing.